What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, gear, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. Today, we're going to be talking about turning potential into skill. Potential into skill. I'm going to start off with a verse from the Gospel of Matthew. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. The talents, whatever skill you've been given, whatever potential you've been given, it's supposed to be used. If you're not familiar with that parable, and that's from the mouth of Jesus, he talks about people being given talents, and some use them wisely and some don't. And the ones who use them wisely are given more, and the ones who don't, they're taken away. How do you turn your potential into actual realized skill and ability? In firearms, specifically, is what we're talking about today. As this is, after all, gunfighter life. How do you take that potential and turn it into skill? How do you turn that potential into real talent, skill, ability? Now, I'm also going to maybe do something that Jesus did to you in this episode, anger you. Many times Jesus angered people with his teaching. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear, and a lot of times we do episodes just on this cool gun and that cool gun and top guns in this class. This may shake you up a little bit, hopefully in a good way, hopefully to get you down the road to actually being an effective user of guns instead of just a gun owner. They are not the same thing. A handgun is not a security blankie. The mere fact that you have it doesn't really mean anything other than you have a hunk of metal that potentially will belong to somebody that does have the skill and ability and personality traits to take and use it. The fact that you have an AR-15 does not make you a soldier, a Marine. The fact that you have a Daniel Defense Mark 18 does not make you special operations. You have to have the skill, ability, personality, courage, strength, physical ability to make use of those things. I guess on that note, I've been leaving the bio out, but I will put in a short version of the bio here if somebody hasn't heard it, just to establish a little bit of street cred. I'll do the quickest one that I have recorded. I may talk about some other things in regard to training. Bio. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patron. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Milito, and I am blessed to serve you today. Okay, so in addition to that, I've also been an instructor, taught military, law enforcement, civilians, urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps, FBI certified handgun instructor. I'm also certified with another 3-letter government agency in many things, up to and including advanced weapons instructor. If you're listening to this, unless you're just a toddler on your gun journey, you probably have a good handgun, rifle, shotgun. All right, you probably have something that will suffice, right? If you have a Glock 19, 17, if you have a Beretta 92, if you have something other than like a Springfield XD, you probably have a decent handgun that will make it through a training class. If you have a Ruger 1022, if you have an AR-15, That's not something that got put together on the kitchen table that is a legit manufacturer. It doesn't even have to be an expensive one. You probably have something to make it through a training class. Obviously, for one to be a gunfighter, not a warrior, but a gunfighter, one must have guns and ammunition. So, here's where I might shake you up a little bit. If you already have a good serviceable handgun, rifle, shotgun, instead of thinking about what's the next cool whiz-bang gun that I'm going to get that has 5% better trigger and, this feature, when's the last time you got professional training? I would surmise instead of spending the money on the new gun and all the accessories and the holster and everything that goes with it, take an actual professional training class. The other handgun may be 5-10% better than the one that you have. But if you've never had a professional training class, then that's going to make you exponentially better than 5 or 10%. If you follow these basic rules, and this applies to myself, I will often take basic training classes, like an NRA basic handgun class. And I always learn something. Always. You go with an open mind. You go with an open mind, expecting to learn. I'm not saying that everything that you learn in every training class is good. In fact, I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. But there is going to be something, invariably, in that training class that you learn and can take with you that will make you a better shooter. Probably just one single thing will make you better than the next polymer striker-fired handgun purchase. Go to a class with an open mind, willing to learn. And the point of a training class is not to make you a ninja. It's not to make you elite special forces in a weekend. That's not how that works. The biggest thing I think you should try and take away from that class is what you need to practice, what you need to train on, the techniques that you need to improve on. So you take the class and you go back and you dry fire and you train on your own. But I think you should start with some kind of training because you don't know what you don't know. And YouTube and Instagram are not your training provider, right? YouTube shorts and Instagram clips on how to do this cool whiz-bang thing, they're not going to make you a gunfighter. They're just not. Sorry. Not everything is solved with a meme. So get out of that habit. It's just kind of the culture that we live in, and I honestly don't like it. And I've been wrestling with whether I should keep doing the YouTube. If you don't know, Good Shepherd Training is also a YouTube channel. I recently started posting on there because many people in the audience said that I should, in the podcasting audience and the patrons, and I don't know everything, right? But I'm posting stuff on there just to prove a point. Let me look up something. Okay, I did some on a bug out bag, more for like alpha male, but DIY pack mods, cheap, easy bug out modifications. I did a rather full-length video, almost 20 minutes. It got 92 views. I did a short, like dancing monkey meme short on YouTube, same title, with a fraction of the content. It got 2.6 thousand views. I don't like that. I'm not in this for the views. I'm not in this to be YouTube famous, right? That's not what I'm about. I like podcasts because they give long-form, in-depth content. Again, not everything is solved by a meme. Not everything is solved by a click and a checkbox in an Amazon cart. I know that may release some endorphins and make you feel better, but again, guns are not security blankies. The mere fact that you have one, or the mere fact that you have some Gucci Glock with all the whiz-bang Cerakote, titanium nitride, ghost trigger, right? That may make you feel good when you show up to the range and your buddy has a basic Glock, but that doesn't mean you're going to shoot better than him. I have seen so many people, especially in like my time as an instructor and my time teaching and just being a range safety officer. When I was managing firearms and training schools and companies and things like that, people have the Gucciest guns and it has no correlation with how good a shooter they are at all. That's not going to solve your problem. Get training, get professional training. Instead of spending that money, if you have the money for a new Gucci gun or whatever, consider spending it on an actual training class. I have been an instructor for one of the biggest firearms training companies in the country, probably by that measure for civilians in the world. Professional firearms instructor. I've also taught many other things, military and law enforcement, but what's available to you, the average listener here, I'm going to recommend, of all the training I've had that you can get, a company I have, other than them training me, other than me taking their training, I don't really have any affiliation. They're not paying me to say this. They don't know that I'm going to say this. PFC, Progressive Force Concepts, out of Las Vegas, Nevada. There are other big training schools in and around there. I'm not recommending those. I'm recommending PFC. There's a lot of good professional experience there. PFC, it's a smaller company, but it's some of the best training I've ever gotten, and that includes military and law enforcement. PFC. So for what you might spend on a holiday in Vegas or whatever, do something worthwhile, maybe. You and a loved one or you and a buddy save up and go fly into Las Vegas, but instead of getting drunk and doing all kinds of debauchery, go take a training class at PFC. They're great. They do handgun classes, they do rifle classes. I even saw they do a shotgun class. If I end up in Vegas again for whatever reason, God might put me there to evangelize. What better place to reach sinners than Sin City? But I would like to take one of their shotgun classes. That's one of the things I haven't taken. But their training is top notch, and it's not crazy expensive, and it's really good training. I'm not saying that's the only game in town, but if you were looking for one to recommend, go with that one. But whatever in your area, even just a basic NRA handgun class, you might think that you know all there is to know about the handgun. I guarantee you, if you go with an open mind, you will learn something from an NRA basic handgun, because there's many different instructors. I'm an NRA basic handgun instructor. Their curriculum is rather basic, but I hope that if you took one of my classes, you would learn something. And I hope that if I took a class from any of the other hundreds of instructors, I don't care if it's a soccer mom who's an NRA basic handgun instructor, if I took her class with an open mind, I would like to think that I would learn something. She has experiences and things that I don't know, and perhaps I could take that and apply that the next time I'm teaching a soccer mom that I just never thought of. Right? Because it's not a big deal for me to rack a slide, but maybe for her that was something she had to overcome, and she can teach me about how to teach other soccer moms on how to rack a slide. Right? That's if I have an open mind. If I go there with I'm not going to learn anything, then yeah. If you go to a class with that attitude, I'm not going to learn anything from this guy. You're right. You're probably not. Go take training and professional training, and not from like your buddy who was a cop one time. He may be a great shooter. He may not be. The fact that somebody was a cop or was a Marine or was a soldier does not make them a good shooter. And I say that as somebody that was a soldier, that was a Marine, that was a police officer. Some cops are gunfighters. Many are not. When I was a young, brash boot, a rookie cop, I thought I was a good shooter. I was a Marine Corps combat veteran. And I was pretty good as far as cops go. I thought I was a good shooter, especially handgun. I was a cop. I was LAPD, one of the longest, hardest police academies in the country. I think the hardest would be arguable, right? But I believe at the time, the longest police academy in the country. I said, oh yeah, I, as a young, way more arrogant than I should have been, rookie police officer, be like, oh yeah, I know how to shoot handgun, and I probably would have taught somebody, like I knew exactly what I was doing. And then a couple of years later, after becoming a cop, I did my first practical shooting competition, and I got schooled. I got DQ'd. I got disqualified my first match. I had so much to learn. And there's two kinds of people in that situation. The kind that would be like, these competition shooters don't know what they're doing, or the kind that would be like, wow, I just got humbled. I have a lot to learn. I should probably go back and learn a lot. So the point of that is, just because somebody was a cop or a soldier or a Marine does not mean that they're a good shooter or a good teacher. Sadly, a lot of military law enforcement stuff is 10 to 20 years behind the curve. One example, I was running an LPVO after I started competition shooting as a sworn peace officer back when nobody was doing it that I knew of. I'm sure somebody somewhere else did. I didn't invent that for police work. But the cool thing back then was the EOTech. Everybody was rocking the EOTech. If you were a super cool guy, you might have had EOTech with a magnifier. But I started shooting competition and I thought, this LPVO concept has a lot of merit. I ran mine with an LPVO. We see that, 15 years ago maybe? We see that a common thing now in military and law enforcement. If you look at red dots on handguns, you see that becoming prevalent in military and law enforcement. The M17, I think in the contract, they wanted the ability to mount optics. 2 or 3 years ago? It's common now in law enforcement to see them running optics. Competition shooters and civilians that are serious about shooting have been running optics for decades. Again, 10 to 20 years behind the curve, and that's just a few easy examples. But you may learn from somebody that was taught the Weaver. I can still shoot in the Weaver, and I can still teach people to shoot in the Weaver. But it's a very antiquated, old, outdated stance. If you learn from somebody that learned from somebody 20 years before, and you might be really good at shooting a Weaver. You might have somebody show you, and he shows you the Weaver, and you're really good at shooting the Weaver. Okay, I'll use this analogy. I grew up poor. I grew up with one of those old, real lawnmowers, like no motor. It's got the old school circle blades, and you push it, and the thing spins by your manpower, and it cuts grass. They're kind of cool. They're kind of novel. They suck to cut grass with. There is a technique to them. There's a lot of tips and tricks. I know because I grew up using one because we were poor. In the South, cutting grass is kind of something you have to do, or at least something people in society think that you should do so you're not seen as poor white trash. I think it's kind of silly myself, but I was a kid and I respected my parents as much as I could, so I cut the grass with this old push lawnmower. There's a technique to it. You can get pretty good at it. It's kind of like peeing up a rope. You can get really good at cutting grass with that thing, but it's never going to be as good as using a regular lawnmower. It just isn't. I kind of see that as like, yeah, you could be really good at shooting a Weaver stance with one eye closed. You can also be really good at driving a stagecoach nowadays, but that's not really applicable. There's way better ways to get around. There's way better ways to cut grass. So learn from a good, modern shooting school. There's much I love about the old ways. But when it comes to gunfighting, you use what's best if your life depends on it. If you want to do something for nostalgia, that's cool. I believe if Wyatt Earp was alive today, he wouldn't be using a Colt single-action army. That's cool and romantic. We think of him as carrying like a Colt 45 single-action army. But if you brought him back and said you're going to get in a gunfight in 2 months, you let him train with some modern guns, I doubt he would take that Colt single-action army. He would probably use what was best for the time and the tactics that were best for the time. He used that gun because it was one of the best guns around for the time. I love nostalgia. I love nostalgia when it comes to guns. I love blued steel and walnut. I like all those things. And they can still be fine for some things. But if you're talking about modern gunfighting, nostalgia should be in its own place. And being effective should be a priority. Morals, number one. A good, godly grasp on when and when not to use force and use deadly force. And then applicability, practicality, being effective, being efficient. Sentimentality. That should be in its own thing. On the training. After you've gotten some training. And I should say another one for rifle, if it's like more modern, you want to take the AR-15 kind of training. Again, PFC. And I've never done Appleseed. I want to do it with my wife. We just, as nomads, it's kind of hard to coordinate. But I really do want to do that with her. I want to take her to an Appleseed shoot. And I want to take a basic Appleseed shoot. So I would recommend that to you, even though I haven't heretofore taken one. I would really recommend an Appleseed shoot. Kind of for the basics and fundamentals of marksmanship. After getting some actual formal training, I would encourage you to go shoot competition. I started out competition shooting, not handgun, but I started out with more precision rifle stuff. Won my first gold medal and state championship before I shipped off to the Marine Corps. So pretty early. I had been competing for years before I shipped off to the Marine Corps to fight a war. Shooting competition is a great way to hone your skill. If you're the kind of person that's competitive. And I would submit, what is a gunfight if not a competition between two men as to who can be more fast and more accurate to stay alive? That's like the ultimate shooting competition. An actual real-world gunfight, a conflict, a battle. Right? The ultimate competition. You're competing to stay breathing at the end of the day. That's a competition. And although the stress and stuff is different, if you've never shot a shooting competition, there's stress. Managing that stress is a big part of being good in competition. You absolutely have to have good shooting fundamentals. You can't miss fast enough to win any discipline in shooting that I'm aware of. You could shoot really, really fast, but if you don't hit nothing, it doesn't matter. You have to have good fundamentals, but you also have to be good at stress management, not getting frustrated, staying focused, your mental game, tactics, planning out how you're going to shoot a course, which are all really important, and they're also really translatable into actual gunfighting. Shoot a competition. If you're a Glock person and you want to get into competition, I would recommend starting out with a GSSF match. That's a Glock only match if you're a Glock person. If not that, you may look at Steel Challenge. I would highly recommend Steel Challenge. I think it's a good, simple, lower barrier to entry, those two. If you want to jump right into IDPA and USPSA, either one of those, I prefer USPSA. My issue with IDPA is there's a lot of rules, and in my experience in real world, there's not a lot of rules in a gunfight. They try to make it like more realistic by adding all these rules, but that's kind of the antithesis to me of actual street fighting. So I'm a bigger fan of USPSA than IDPA. Not that there's not some advantages, but any of those disciplines are good if you're talking about the handgun realm or any outlaw match. A lot of places will have outlaw matches because they don't particularly like the USPSA or IDPA rules. You may look at an outlaw match and see what the rules are for it. And you don't even have to compete your first time. You may just want to show up and just watch. What are you doing on a weekend? Go show up and watch. Watch what they're doing. Help them set up. There's a lot that goes into shooting competition that's not shooting. There's moving steel targets. There's setting up steel targets. There's this. There's that. Ask if you can help. They'd be happy to have, trust me, they'll be happy to have volunteers. Going out and taping. And you can watch different people, how they run different courses. And going out and volunteering, even if you're not ready yet to actually compete. Maybe you're thinking, I'm going to compete when I get this holster, when I get that holster. First of all, I would say go with what you have. I don't care if you're reloading out of a pocket. You're going to have so much to learn. How well you do on your first shooting competition is going to have nothing to do with how cool and Gucci your mag pouch war belt setup is. It's going to have to do with you remembering to breathe on the stage because there's so much stress involved. Anybody that's new to competition that's shot one recently will probably tell you that's true. Go with what you have, but if you're not ready yet, go. Go watch, go observe, go help, go volunteer. A USPSA match, an IDPA match. I just say those because they're big. Go look one up. And maybe ask what other competitions are in the area. Maybe a, weekday, nighttime steel match. All steel matches are some of my favorite matches. They're different rules in different places, but like the man-on-man steel matches, freaking love those things. They're awesome. Maybe go watch. Go watch a couple. You'll probably end up wanting to shoot one. But shooting competition absolutely can add another level in turning your potential into actual skill. It'll add things that you just aren't probably going to get. And it'll force you to practice things you either don't usually practice because you don't like them, which is really inapplicable whether you like them or not if they're something that might happen in a real world scenario, like shooting left-handed around the left side of a barricade, one hand only. Things you may not think about to practice on your own. And you'll get the added benefits of the stress, of the movement, of all those kind of things. One other thing I will talk about is when you go to practice, whether it is live fire or dry fire, have a plan, right? I don't just go to the gym and be like, oh, what am I going to do today? That machine looks neat. Let me lift that a couple of times. Right? When I go to the gym, it may change on the fly because I live as a nomad and I may be working out from home that day, maybe going to the gym that day, but I have a general plan of what I'm doing that day. Like, I have a general plan, and I have a general dry fire plan. What do I hope to accomplish today? Am I just focusing on handgun fundamentals, which is pretty common? Am I doing CQB stuff today? Am I practicing with my hunting rifle today because I'm about to ship out to Alaska and I don't want to get eaten by a grizzly bear? Right, I have a plan. You should have a plan when you go to the range. Your plan shouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to shoot pine cones. Or I've got an empty 6-pack. I'm going to go set out and shoot. If you want to just go plinking, that's fine. That's plinking. That's for fun. If you want to take a kid out and do that and just have fun, that's a great thing. But that's not training. I would not consider that training. Training denotes you have a plan of attack, a plan of action. Right, when you go to train in the military, you probably have an op order. You probably have a debrief. You probably have all those kind of structured things. I'm not saying you have to be that structured, but you should probably have a plan. What skills do you need to practice? You probably won't know what skills those are unless you've taken a training class or shot a competition or something like that. You go to competition and realize, wow, I really need to practice my weak hand shooting. Well, guess what? Now when you train on your own, you have a plan. I'm going to practice some fundamentals for X amount of minutes, and I'm going to practice one-handed shooting with my offhand, with my non-dominant hand for X amount of minutes, or to an X amount of standard until I can get 5 hits on a silhouette target at 25 yards in a row consistently. Whatever your criteria is. Here's another one, especially if you're into the concealed carry. Shoot a qual. I recommend the FBI qual, not because it's the best qual out there, but because it's the most easily recognized. It's not the worst qual either. I was an FBI handgun instructor. Not the best qual. It's not the worst qual. But it incorporates a lot of those skills, like transitions, right hand or weak hand. I think the first stage is draw 3 rounds, right hand only, transition 3 rounds, left hand only, or strong hand, weak hand, however they word it. If I remember correctly, it's been a few months since I've shot the FBI qual, but I think that's the first stage. It's a pretty good practical stage. That's a good place to start, and then maybe you can look at your stages, and after you've shot that qual a couple of weeks in a row and think, okay, I'm consistently good on these skills, but I really need to work on these skills. And then when you practice again, maybe when you're not shooting the qual or in dry fire, you think, okay, I'm going to focus after my fundamentals on these skills, because you need your primary focus to be on the fundamentals. If your foundation sucks, doesn't matter how fast you can shoot. If you can't hit anything slow, you're not going to hit anything fast, unless it's just by happenstance. And that's not how you bank on winning a gunfight, by happenstance. It's not how I do it. Not how I advise you to do it. Focusing on the fundamentals primarily and always. You're never, when you think you're too good to practice the fundamentals, it's probably when you start being not very good. You're never too good for the fundamentals. But have a plan when you go to practice. I didn't know if I had enough to make this into an episode, and it's going long, and I haven't, and I'm still got stuff on the agenda to talk about. Okay, so let's move along a little bit here. 22 is a great way to turn potential into skill. If you already have a good center fire, let's say handgun or AR, consider a 22 counterpart. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, right? A good 10-22. If you have an AR, many of those skills aren't exactly the same, but if you don't have a 10-22 and you have a decent AR and you're looking at, should I get the next Daniel Defense or should I get the LMT AR? You should probably get a 22 if you don't have one, because the amount of money that you're going to spend on that, if you spent that on a Ruger 10-22 and bricks of ammo and actually went out and shot, is going to make you way better with the AR that you already have than getting another AR that you don't put thousands of rounds through and practice with. If you want, you could even get the 22 AR kind of things if that's what you want to be the best at. Many of the things, again, the fundamentals, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, stance, grip, follow through, breath control, those things. Standing position, offhand, kneeling, sitting, crouching, prone, urban prone, supine, all those positions you can practice. It really doesn't matter if you're doing it with a 10-22 or an AR-15, and you're just going to be able to practice more if you're like most of us and have an actual budget. Let's say you have $100 a month on which to spend on ammo or range time or a combination thereof. Get a lot more bang for your buck, literally bang for your buck with the 22. 22 is not as cheap as it used to be. I just bought a brick of it because I was down to my last brick in my range bag. But it's a lot cheaper than 5.56 and 308. So 22 is a great way. On the handgun, get a 22 handgun. Get one that's fairly analogous, depending on what you want to train, to your combat handgun. It doesn't have to be the same, right? But if you run a Glock, maybe get the Glock 40, whatever it is, the 22 version of it, or get a Tactical Solutions conversion kit. I would say that's probably way better. And shoot a bunch of 22. It's even if you have no desire to hunt small game, be into survivaling. If you have no desire for the 22 for that, just the ability to turn potential into skill and ability in the 22 is just a great training tool. Not everything is exactly the same. For instance, your recoil control is one thing that's going to be different. Like let's say I'm running an M&P 22 and a Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm, one of my common practice combos for competition. right? Recoil control is not exactly the same. So a bill drill, if you don't know what that is, it's taking a target, let's say a USPSA target at 7 yards, and how quick can I dump 6 rounds into the A zone of that target? That's going to be different between the 22 and the 9mm. But many, many other things, the majority of the other important things are going to be pretty much the same. Right? My draw, trying to get from, a 2.5 second draw to a 1.5 second draw, or a 1.5 second draw to a 0.75 second draw. You're trying to get there. I think you're going to get there way faster buying a 22 and bricks of ammo and training that and practicing that than you are thinking that you're going to do better getting the, I don't know, what's the big name right now in Gucci Glocks? Going from our standard Glock 17 to the Gucciest Gucci Glock. Shadow systems, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with the shadow systems. It's a fine gun, but just stick with your standard Glock 17 and you buy the 22 training version and run thousands of rounds to it and practice your draw and then go back and dry fire what you need to work out your kinks. I would submit that you're going to get to that sub 0.75 second draw way faster than if you just buy the Gucci Glock and run 100 rounds to it and think, I've got the Gucci Glock, of course I'm going to be faster. I bought it and I bought the cool accessories on Amazon, of course I'm going to be better. The fact that you have the thing does not mean that thing is reaching its potential, just like it doesn't mean that you're reaching your potential. Nothing wrong with having nice stuff. I like nice stuff. I have 2 STIs. I carried them on duty. I shot them in competition. I love those guns. They are worth every penny. But I competed for years and years before I ever had an STI, and I won competitions against people that likely had way more expensive guns because I won the majority of my competitions with Smith & Wesson M&P. And I will concede that the STI 2011 is a far better gun, for sure, in almost every conceivable way. But at the time, with my budget as a police officer and other jobs, I was better off sticking with the M&P and putting my money into ammo and 22, training counterparts and putting the time in and the training in than all the overtime I would have had to work and the not shooting I would have had to do to save up and buy an STI 2011. So where are you at in your journey? But really, you want to turn potential into actual skill and ability. Get professional training. Go shoot a competition. Have a plan when you dry fire, when you live fire, when you do a range session. Have a plan. Look at getting a 22. If you already have a good serviceable fighting carbine, handgun, consider getting a 22 instead of the next Gucci thing. And guns are not the most important thing in life. I'll do the tactical tip and then we'll get into the tactical verse of the day. Tactical tip of the day. Targets are important with how you train. Having a standard and having a standard target helps. Couple of basic setups here. A lot of companies, I'm not endorsing anyone, but make good cheap target stands with those cheap, whatever they are, like 1x2s. Just simple sticks that you can put up a USPSA target or an IDPA target. I like those because you don't have to worry about the paper target in conjunction with the backer. You can just staple those right up. One of those setups if you want to go the paper route. If you want to go the steel route, which has a lot of advantages, there are companies that make a hanger that just goes on an engineer stake, those green fence post stakes that you can pound into the ground. Just having one of those and having one of the hangers and a round, let's say 8-inch steel plate. One of those cheap white spray paint cans from Walmart. You can do a lot with just that basic range setup if you live somewhere in a free state where you can just go out on public land and shoot. You can do a lot with just those simple things. So one of those, either the green kind of fence post adapter so you can hang a target on there, and just a round 8-inch steel plate, or a simple target stand with an IDPA, USPSA, couple of cardboard targets. You can do a lot with either one of those simple setups. You might get to the point where you want more. You're going to need multiple targets because you're doing target transitions and whatnot. But that's a good basic setup. And with that, the tactical verse of the day. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, who brought you up from the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are approaching the battle, the priest shall come near and speak to the people. He shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, you are approaching the battle against your enemies today. Do not be faint-hearted. Do not be afraid, or panic, or tremble before them. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. God is the most important thing. God saves. He is our refuge and strength. The ultimate of warriors. Exodus 15, that was Deuteronomy 20, by the way. Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war. You want strength, you want courage, you want all those abilities to be realized, you go to the one who gave them to you, the one who embodies strength and courage. You go to God first and always. Don't lose sight of what's really important. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.